Well, the government is adamant they have not broken an election promise as it announced an increase to superannuation tax accounts, as we've been speaking about, on over $3 million from 2025. I want to bring in now Saturday Herald Sun columnist Steve Price. Steve, what are your thoughts on this and how this has been handled?
Sharri, it's been handled appallingly. Of course, it's a broken promise. How can they stand there and tell a bald-faced lie? It's a broken promise. Anthony Albanese said during the election campaign they wouldn't make any changes to super. Then he starts inserting the word no intention to change it. And I'd love to go back through what happened last week. Monday, Chalmers is on Talkback Radio saying, oh, well, we just want to legislate and see what super actually means. By Wednesday, you had bomb thrower Stephen Jones saying, oh, well, this might hit people over $5 million accounts. Then it dropped to $3 million. And then by yesterday, it was actually an announced policy. Now, Sharri, you know politics better than anyone else. There's no way that they could have drawn this policy up in a week and got it ready to announce yesterday. They had this ready to go. They were playing rope-a-dope with Albanese and then rope-a-dope with Chalmers and then Jones, and we're the ones who are now going to have to sit back and go, oh, well, we can trust them.
But that's the thing, Steve. If they would have just come out last Monday and said, look, we're not going to touch everyone's super. We're just doing it for the you know, as Shorten used to say, the top end of town, people with more than $3 million in their bank accounts, the fuss wouldn't have been as extensive. It still would have been a debate over the broken promise, but it wouldn't have been so bad. And had they said at that point, look, it's not going to come in until after the election, so we will take it to an election. So it does get the sense that the policy was more rushed. And it was, you know, there are reports it was rushed through cabinet on Tuesday night. So you do get the sense that it might be policy on the run and that this might have been one part of a broader suite of changes that they might have been discussing or planning.
I think you made a very excellent point in your opening when you talked about the ambition of Jim Chalmers and how Anthony Albanese is here to get one more term at the next election. Wouldn't you love, Sharri, to have been on the end of that phone call that came today when Anthony Albanese clearly rang the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, and said, mate, what are you doing going on Sunrise and not ruling out the fact that we might hit capital gains tax changes on people's principal property, the houses where they live? He would have been screaming at Jim Chalmers today. It might have been, you know, like an old Paul Keating phone call. I reckon he would have torn strips off Chalmers, and I saw him then have to apologise, Jim Chalmers, of course, to our own Kieran Gilbert.
Yeah, we've got those comments, so let's have a look at that. Jim Chalmers conceding he should have ruled them out.
You know, I don't want to get into the practice of coming before you each day and working through hundreds of billions of dollars of tax concessions and playing the same rule-in, rule-out game. But I should have done that when it came to the family home this morning. And I'm happy to say that. I'm very prepared to say that, and I'm happy to tell you why.
Steve, the opposition has been struggling. This has given them a good platform to mount a strong fight against Labor, and it will be a fight that they'll take up until the next election.
Exactly. And I think the next thing we've got to keep an eye on now, and I'm sure the opposition are getting ready to line their little ducks up in a row on this, Sharri, and that is, forget about, you know, capital gains on the principal place of residence, the family home. That won't happen. But negative gearing. Keep your eye on negative gearing, because negative gearing on investment properties, I looked up the figure for you this afternoon, that is about a $26 billion annual hit on the budget. Now, Labor and a Labor government have always hated negative gearing, where somebody invests in an investment property and then claims a tax back on the losses they make between the rent they get and what their mortgage is. And interest rate rises are pushing those mortgages up, so more people are using negative gearing. That'll be the next one to come. Don't you worry. And we can put this in the vault, pull it out when it happens.
And let's have a very quick look at what Peter Dutton had to say today, because he was looking like he had the fight in him.
You can understand why a lot of Australians are really scratching their head about a Prime Minister that they now can't trust, a Treasurer that they can't trust, and their own superannuation money is under attack from the Labor Party. We've now seen the first change of what I think will be many changes in the superannuation and tax space over the term of this government and into the next term of government if they're re-elected.
Steve, the latest GDP figures have been released. It shows a 0.5% quarterly growth. Inflation, however, looks to be coming down. It's not as high as it was.
Well, I guess people are now showing the spending habits of someone who's had a whack over the head with 7 straight interest rate rises, with another one likely next Tuesday, Sharri. So something's got to give. And I've heard some horrendous examples today of what people were paying for their monthly mortgage, 6 months ago, and what they're now being asked to pay. And you've got a lot of those people, as you know, Sharri, coming off fixed rate mortgages. Exactly. That'll happen in the next couple of months. You get another 0.25 next week. People are really hurting. I'm not surprised that those figures show that we've stopped spending.
Yeah. Well, this surprised me because, you lay out the scenario that you just did. I've been so critical of the RBA Governor, Philip Lowe, because he encouraged people to take out loans, promising there wouldn't be any rate rises until 2024. We've now had a series of them. Billionaire businessman Gerry Harvey, he's come out and defended the governor. He says the institution has been unfairly targeted. What are your thoughts on this?
I think Gerry's wrong, and I think Philip Lowe was wrong to do what he did when he said, keep borrowing money, keep buying houses. I mean, Andrew Clennell did a door knock in one of the electorates in Sydney today. One of the blokes who opened the door said his mortgage rate had gone up by something like $2,000 a month, and he's now fearful it's going to go up again. I mean, inflation is out of control. Everything costs more in the supermarket. We're all feeling the pain. No one's going to feel any pain for me on this, but I can tell you, Sharri, last weekend, how much do you think I paid for 2 pints of beer in a Melbourne pub? $36.58 for 2 pints. $36.
Wow. Where were you drinking? What suburb was this?
Wow. I knew you'd ask that. Do I really have to answer?
No, you don't. You can have some privacy, although you did just bring it up on national television.
I was in the Portsea pub, but nonetheless, $36.58 for 2 beers? Give me a break.
Very expensive. Now, Australia's largest sporting codes, including the AFL and NRL, are preparing to come together and campaign for the Indigenous voice to Parliament. Steve, should sporting codes stick to sport, or do you think they should be getting involved in debates like this?
I'd like them to keep out of it. It's not just AFL and NRL, it's netball, it's tennis, it's cricket, the whole lot. The AFL has always been very wokish about things. I just have one small question, that is, have they actually polled anonymously the players to find out if they want to get involved?